Hello, welcome to the Jones Jam Sessions podcast. I am Crimson Raven Prince Jonathon, and I am here with Michael the Immortal.
Bonjour. I don't know whether you're doing a French accent.
I don't know what I was doing. It was trying to be a vampire. Anyway, welcome to...
It did sound French, but
Yeah. Well, I think Lezstats is French, so yeah, that works. Welcome to the John's Jam Sessions podcast. Right off the top, apologies for no episode last week. There was a slight communication breakdown on my behalf, and then I was too hungover on Sunday for us to reconvene and record it.
yeah.
So apologies for that. Trying to keep this weekly, but sometimes every now and again there will be one missed. If you want to support us though and make sure we can get them out every week, you can follow us on Spotify, follow us on all the social medias, subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on TikTok, etc., etc. And then maybe one day we can escape our hellhole jobs and do this for a living. Wouldn't that be great? John's Jam Sessions all the time, every time.
That's the dream, that, isn't it?
So this week we're doing something a little bit different. I have covered a film on the podcast before, way back with Gav, all the way from Chaz, sorry, all the way from America.
Mm-hmm.
And but this one, it's not so much the film itself, because the film itself is, I'm going to be straight out the bat, it's shit. But it's more like there's a lot surrounding this film. A lot of people know it more for its soundtrack. A lot of people know it more for its involvement with a certain nu metal legend, Mr. Jonathon Davis. So we're going back. This is more Korn.
We can't keep away from John Davis, can we?
We can't keep away from the nu metal. Remember when you were getting worried that we were talking too much about the Chili Peppers?
Yeah.
They haven't been mentioned in ages, have they?
John Davis, he won't leave us, will he? He won't leave us alone.
He won't leave us. He's ingrained in deep inside us. So the film we're talking about and its soundtrack is 2002's Queen of the Damned. And before we start, what is your relationship with vampires? Tell me everything you kind of know, or have you ever seen any vampire films? Have you got any connections with vampires whatsoever? Or does the only thing that come up in your head is the stereotype, the cape, the fangs,
basically
want to suck your cock?
I'm not a first of all, I'm not a huge film buff. Full stop. There's loads of classic films that I haven't seen. You could reel off loads of classic films like The Godfather. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen that either, to be honest.
Goodfellas,
though.
Goodfellas is class, yeah. But there's loads of films I haven't seen, let alone vampire films. I remember watching Van Helsing when I was a kid and thinking it was garbage.
That was around the same time as this, that one, yeah.
Yeah, it was the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
I just thought it was so cheesy and ridiculous. So yeah, me and vampire films, we're not the best of friends. So when you mentioned that you wanted to review this film on the podcast, straight off the bat, I knew that this was going to be one of those films that is just possibly so bad it's good, possibly so bad it's entertaining in like a Sharknado type way, or like one of the Nicolas Cage films, Connor or something like that.
Yeah.
I was associating it with those types of films, so I thought, I'm not watching this film. Point blank, I will not watch this film. What I will do, because I don't like wasting 2 hours of my life watching bad film. That's my worst nightmare, is dedicating 2 hours of my life to something that I already know is going to be shite.
Well, we do this every week.
This is 1 hour, to be fair.
Yeah.
So I thought, what would probably be up my street is the soundtrack, in terms of, I know a lot of these bands from when I was deep into my nu metal phase. A lot of the bands, a lot of the singers.
Yeah.
Obviously, John Davis was a massive influence for me as a kid. So I thought that might be quite entertaining to revisit the soundtrack to the film and just see how possibly bad, possibly good it is. Do I enjoy any of these songs in this day and age? Do I think they're cringe? Do I think they're terrible? And I've got to say, it's a little bit of a mixture of all three. A little bit. Most of the songs on this track list were just, I won't spoil anything, but most of them were mediocre, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you do the tie-ins to the film, because you have actually seen the film, haven't you?
Yeah, so I've got a lot to walk through here. As you said, you're not a film buff. I love films. I would consider, even though I haven't seen The Godfather, I would. It's on my watch list. I would definitely say that I love films. I love watching films, movies, good and bad. I'm very much into them. So I'm a bit worried here because I've got lots and lots of notes, and I don't want this to be the film review. I do want to focus more on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So you have got a task while I do all of this,
Okay.
and that's to keep me in check.
Yeah.
So if you think that I'm going way too off into the woods on this, and I'm diatribing and going off into film, lore, and media, etc., you need to say garlic,
Garlic.
and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will reel it in and try and condense it as fast as possible.
Yeah. That's
There is a lot that I do want to talk about with this film because, as I say, it's a very, it's interesting because the film is not interesting, but the production and kind of the decisions around it are interesting. So through talking about the film, I do want to kind of bring in the soundtrack and kind of explain what happened. So why on earth Jonathon Davis, lead singer of Korn, was a composer on a soundtrack score and also ended up kind of creating about, what was it, 5 or 6 songs,
Yeah.
especially for the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So I'll just I'm going to reel through my notes. It's going to be a bit scatterbrained, but I think some people will find this quite interesting. So, straight off the bat, I love films. One film I love in particular is The Interview with the Vampire from 1994, which is based off the novel The Interview with the Vampire from Anne Rice, which is also what this film is very, very loosely based. So these were a series of books before they were films.
Right.
1994, they release in The Interview with the Vampire, starring Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, two, massive, well-known actors. You know what I mean? They're back in the early 90s, like they were still quite big actors, but like if there was a Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise film out like now or about 10 years ago, it'd be a lot bigger deal than it was back then.
Yeah.
I think Brad Pitt was still on the up and up. Tom Cruise had had a few hits in the 80s, but he wasn't the level he was at this point. So really quickly, Interview with the Vampire, great film. It's basically kind of the narration of the vampire Louis, and he goes on about his life from how he became a vampire. He kind of has this mentor slash part. It's really like homoerotic as well. Like it's funny with Tom Cruise. So they kind of like live together as kind of like a bickering pair of like vampires, and shenanigans ensue basically. And the film ends kind of in the modern day at the time, the 90s, and it ends with Tom Cruise, who plays the vampire Lestat, and he puts Guns N' Roses on the radio, and he's driving his car, and it's kind of alluding to what's going to happen in future films.
Yeah.
So that film comes out. It's a big blockbuster hit. I loved it as a kid, but kind of nowadays, I think it's good to okay, you know what I mean? A decent film. So after that, the original director, he wanted to get straight to work on a sequel, basically, and the studio kept knocking it down. There was lots of problems with the film, by the way. Brad Pitt hated it. He just didn't enjoy any of it. So it kept getting pitched to them, like, let's do a sequel, let's do a sequel. And the studio was like, no, we don't, we don't think it's got legs. No. We can't afford to bring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt back. Eventually, it came out that if they didn't actually start work on a sequel or any project related to it by 2000, they lose the rights. They go back to like the Anne Rice estate.
Yeah.
So they pretty much got to work on making this film, Queen of the Damned, $40 million budget. Which is nowadays you'd look at that and scoff, but this was still 20 years ago, so it's like mid-range, you know what I mean. Despite it was critically panned, and pretty much no one liked it. It was a flop in the cinemas, but due to the low profit of it, it did actually make a bit of its money back. It stars unknown actor Stuart Townsend, and I think she was a hip hop artist. What's that name?
Alia.
Yeah. She died right after the production of the film.
Yeah.
Sadly. So basically, the kind of original plot of the books is the vampire Lestat pursues a career as a rock star, and
Wow.
in the books it works a bit better because the books are obviously set in the 80s, so it was kind of like the height of like glam rock and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you think with vampires and you think campiness, you think of like all the bands of the 80s, like Kiss, for example, where they all had their own personas, they all had their own, like, Gene Simmons was like, I'm the demon. It was like a similar thing where he was like basically kind of revealing himself to the world, singing about being a vampire, doing vampire shit, but he's he's in a band, so people kind of just laugh it off and be
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's a persona, it's an alter ego kind of thing." He's doing a David Bowie, he's doing a this and that. So obviously, with him being a rock star, that being a main plot point in the film,
Yeah.
they're gonna need kind of music. They're gonna and they're looking around. Who can we bring onto this project? Who can write music? And they stumbled across Jonathon Davis and Ryan Gibbs.
Yeah.
So apparently Jonathan Davis was trying to make noise in Hollywood. He was trying to branch out a bit and become a composer.
Yeah.
Don't know why this would have been around. What, Untouchables
It
era?
was Untouchables, 2002, wasn't it? And
Yeah,
the only reason I can think of as to why John Davis ended up being the composer for this film is that he must have put himself forward and forced himself on
yeah,
the directors and the production team, because I can think of so many artists that were around in the late 90s, early 2000s who would have been more suited to this type of film. Like a Trent Reznor, like he's done film scores before and stuff, hasn't he?
yeah.
And this I would imagine would be right up his street, something like this.
But I wanted to get into that on the back end of them,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'll give my 2 cents on that once we've finished with the soundtrack.
yeah.
So yeah, as I say, John Davis alongside Ryan Gibbs were already trying to make noise in Hollywood about creating scores and music for the movies. The original story set in the 80s and glam rock was the focus. The film is two big books squashed together with loads changed.
Mm.
So, you can imagine, fans of the book series aren't going to be happy with this film. There's a lot to talk about. Shout out garlic if I'm going on too much, but I'm going to roll
Yeah,
off the notes here. So
yeah.
it kind of opens up with a 2000s ass fonts opening credits like Matrix fonts. This is the bit I want to talk about the most because this is the funniest part of the film and the only
Right,
part of the film that like gets a laugh out of you. The rest of it is just pretty boring, really.
right.
The film opens with Lestat being in a long slumber, even though it's a sequel which only took place 8 years ago
Yeah.
from the original. He says 100 years, so already plot holes and continuities out the window.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's awakened by a sound, and that sound is a new metal band having a jam. So you see in the film, you see like the bass pound, and you see
Yeah.
all the new metal stylings, and they're in like a warehousey kind of practice room thing, and they're rocking out. And Lestat's in his graveyard, he's in his tomb, and he goes, "I heard a strange sound, and
Really?
it's awoken something in deep inside me."
Oh
And then
no.
you get this like the band's jamming, and then all of a sudden, like the band's jamming, and you just hear in the John Davis voice, right? So John Davis giving a and they all
Someone
turn around, and go, "Oh my god, what's that voice? What's that voice?" And it's Lestat the vampire sat on the amp and the speakers, giving out this John Davis. And
Sorry, this is the beginning. This is the
this is the
first.
opening. This
This
is
is the
the
opening scene in the film.
pretty much, yeah, the
Wow.
first 5 minutes
I
of the
mean,
film.
already a lot has gone on here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how's this? Like, how could you? So he's been woken up by the noise of the band performing, or
So
have they summoned him via like a
it's
ritualistic
by
type?
no, it's by the sound. So he basically says he got bored of the world, he got sick of the world, and he decided to go into a long state of sleep
It can't have been
until something awoken him,
it can't have been that deep a sleep, can
and
it?
and it was the sound of a drop down D guitar and a bit of rumble from a bit of hip hop infused metal music.
I've slept through louder noise when I've been coming off nights in the morning. I've slept through people drilling outside in the street and he's been awoken by the sound in the distance in a different
Yeah, yeah,
room
yeah.
of an amplifier. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
brilliant, fantastic.
So he wakes up, he finds someone, he has a munch, and there's no blood on sight, which is pretty tame. And he hears some new metal band jamming in this like kind of. He says it's his old house, so it's like a crumbly, fallen down mansion or some shit like that. And he's like, "Oh, in my old house, they were playing music." He's doing like a really bad French accent,
Oh,
and like he comes up, he finds some kit, he's all dripped in leather, and he lets out the John Davis. And they all turn around. They're like, "Oh my god, I've never heard a voice like that before." They're all amazed. By the way, this is like meant to make out that like it's meant to make out that like that they're just blown away. There's
yeah,
like loads of reverb and like effect on it as
yeah,
well. So I think the film's trying to imply that he can just naturally
yeah, yeah.
create reverb and effects with his
Yeah.
So they're all like, "Whoa, who the fuck are you? What you doing?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm a vampire." He does some tricks and he joins their band.
And at no point were they alarmed by the fact that he's a vampire.
I think they were a bit like set back, but I think they kind of like. I think they were like, you know what I mean. We've got a good gig here. We've got a good dude on the go. The film kind of starts with its kind of like opening credits and like a little montage, like a little fake music video for the band, and it's Forsaken, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
But it's the John Davis vocals, and I have to say, his vocals on Forsaken are dreadful.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
really bad, and in this film, his voice is supposed to be like otherworldly and like it's meant to take the world by storm.
Yeah.
I didn't expect it to be that bad. Davis's version is David Drainian's version
Yeah.
is a huge improvement. I was
Yeah.
genuinely shocked. I was like, bloody hell, this is really rough.
Think about it, John Davis, he's not a technically brilliant singer anyway. We were talking on the Korn episode about how he actually got better in his later years.
Yeah.
He's actually got a much better, he's become a more technically competent singer on Korn's last 3 albums. 2002 was Untouchables era, and we slated this album on the podcast.
We did.
Neither of us are a fan of this album, and a big reason for that was John Davis's performances were so bad across that whole album. So really, they couldn't have picked many worse people to actually feature in terms of vocally on this album, could they? They must have heard some of his vocal takes and gone, right, Wayne Static, get here. David Draymond, get here.
Well, we'll get into
Marilyn Manson, get here.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. But I think it was him trying to act like, sing as if you like this vampire. So he's like, he's putting something on. It's not the fact that he's singing badly. It's like he's putting it on. He's really emphasizing. He's like, I'm over it. It's really weird. Like
again, that was Untouchables all over for me.
It was, to be fair. So Lestat is a really smug, cringe edgelord. He looks like Anakin Skywalker out of Star Wars, like Hayden Christensen. He feeds because he is a vampire. After all, you got to remember that he feeds on groupies, and maybe this was a message. Maybe there was something behind this.
Oh.
A predatory rock star preying on the groupies.
Yeah.
Cold plays when he's messing about with the groupies. I have tried to note when the songs come in parts of the film. I just put me notes. The edge of this film is slicing me up to ribbons. He's got like a human love interest, Jessie, who was raised by vampires but then adopted or given away, whatever, Body Crumbles plays on in the TV when the girl's in a gaff for 5 seconds, and then Redeemer plays. She's doing some work, and then Redeemer plays, and then again, really, really like kind of bad vocals from John Davis. Sounds bloody awful again, and I was really shocked. I don't remember his vocal takes being so bad. Manson, I don't know if you actually went and listened to the Manson one. Really nailed it on his version, I thought.
He did, but there was still that John Davis presence lurking.
Yeah.
When I was listening to that song, I could still feel like John Davis was there, either doing backing vocals or overlaying Manson's vocals. If you know, you'd probably know what I mean more if you re-listen to it. So it's like there's a clash between Marilyn Manson and John Davis's vocals.
So I'm going to speed this along now a bit more. So basically, he's a rock star. He's living the dream. Everyone's like, oh my god, this vampire Lestat. And then the film goes into this weird, like, big flashback scene that takes up almost like, I'd say, a third of the film. So all kind of the new metal stuff, all the rock star stuff, all the music stuff takes a back seat for like it feels like forever. It really drags on, and we get this big long like flashback scene to Lestat back in the day when he became a vampire, 18th century. He's got like a mentor. They're a bit like the homoeroticisms are there again. His mentor's like don't go down into this basement. There's something bad there. Goes down to the basement. There's a statue of a woman, which is the Queen of the Damned. He sucks her off, even though she's a statue that somehow works. He chomps into her wrist and sucks her blood. The mentor goes mad. He's like, oh, you fucked this now. This is bad. He fucks off and vanishes. And then that kind of ends the cutscene. I condensed about looking 25 minutes into as fast as I could then. So, like, that's what I mean. Like, this film was kind of like, it's one of them where it's like, I'll get into it later.
Yeah.
So basically, there's like a vampire club in London somewhere, but all the vampires meet, and this girl goes there. It's basically like the vampire crazy house. there's loads of naughty vampos, and they're giving her the eyes when she's walking in. The vampires start trying to riz it up, like, oh, look at human, what are you doing in, all that. She says she's with some guy who's the mentor to Lestat, and Lestat's in there in the shadows. So she runs out, vampires try and attack her, Lestat saves her. Fucking, like, this whole scene of, like, he's like, oh, you know a lot about me, don't you? Shit like that. Really, really cringe kind of, like, romance thing trying to go on between Lestat and this woman.
I've never seen this film, but I can picture the acting being dreadful.
Oh yeah, it's pretty bad. He's basically, all this is leading up to him playing a big gig. So what's happening is he's a rock star. He's singing songs about being a vampire. He's exposing vampire secrets through his music,
Right.
and all the other vampires who think that they should stay in the shadows and not expose themselves to the outside world. They're getting pretty pissed off. They're getting pretty mad. They're getting a bit like, oh, this guy's fucking. He's, you know what I mean. It was like, how they had to get rid of Epstein before he gave away all the information. It's like that. He's gonna whistle blow all the vampire stuff. So they're getting agitated by him. They're not happy. So he's got this big massive gig that it's all building up to, and so he's gonna do this gig, and all the vampires are planning, we're gonna go there and we're gonna fucking do him in. Because he's doing all right, and now more little stupid romance things with the girls. Goes flying around the city with her, really establishing a relationship with this human girl. It's very, very Twilight coded, which is something I want to talk about later on as well. She's like, oh, make me a vampire. It's gonna be cool, great. And he's like, no, it's pain. You have to suck people off. It's horrible. Oh, the typical vampire melancholy. This is a curse. I'm a monster. Anyway, I'm gonna go and play a rock gig now. I'm gonna play some, Korn-esque music at this big gig. So this big gig in this like big canyony place, right? There's this big like new metal festival, and as you see the crowds coming into the gig, you can hear over the speakers.
Oh no!
So Disturbed are canonically in this universe. Disturbed exist in this film. So Disturbed are the support band for the vampire, basically. And it sounds like a live version as well. It's not like music playing over the film. It's like in the film. So David Draney witnesses the War of the Vampires, and I couldn't be happier about that. I forgot to mention before that as well. Jonathon Davis makes a cameo in the film himself as a ticket touter, trying to sell the woman character Jessie some tickets. He's like, "Hey, you're gonna some tickets." He's got a really funny, soft-spoken voice, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has it.
Hey, do you want some tickets? Come on, baby. Really cool. And then he does this. I'm over it. Right. Oh my god, I'm losing track here.
My head's mashed already.
There's a lot. I know. I'm really trying to condense this. Lestat and his band, that really have nothing. By the way, the band have nothing to do in the film. Like, it really is kind of like a shame, because it's like you'd think this is the angle the film would kind of go down. Like, what's it like to play in a band with a vampire? And anyway, regardless, they get on stage and they start performing "Slept So Long," the only song that's played from start to finish throughout the whole film, which really makes you wonder why did they go through so much effort making all these songs. John's vocals are solid on this one, and probably one of my favourite out of the songs. But there's trouble. There's trouble in the mill. All the vampires are coming out to attack and kill him. And like, it's funny really, because you want to stay hidden in the shadows. They don't wait until like he's backstage or the gig's finished to kill him. They start flying onto the stage in front of thousands of people and having a big vampire war with him and all that. And there's good ones helping Lestat, bad ones trying to kill him. Big battle while all this new metal music's playing, you know what I mean? You can just imagine it in your head, can't you? But then the Queen of the Damned shows up and kills all the enemy vampires. And at this point, anything with the new metal rock stuff, rock star angle, all that's over at this point in the film. We pretty much get into a whole new film after that. This film is like 3 films. Like 3 bits of film all mashed into one. It's really a mess.
It does sound like it.
Lestat and the Queen of the Damned piss off to an island, and they're like fucking about. Queen of the Damned thinks that his John Davis music is lit. Change plays as Lestat and Queen of the Damned have a sexy bath together. You can see it on the back cover there, I think, with roses, and they're kissing and they're sucking each other off, and She turns into it all just starts going little big new metal moment. At this point now, the actual part of the film, the soundtrack of the music was over, so I skipped it to the end when the good vamp's doing the Queen of the Damned. She turns into bad CGI dust. Lestat turns Jesse into a vampire, and they live happily ever after.
The end.
Yeah, the end. So to sum this film up, Jesus Christ, that was hard work. This film is, mind the pun, lifeless.
Yeah.
Worst crime is it's boring as hell and really wastes the potential of telling the story about a rock star vampire. There was quite a bit that could have been done with the concept, but the plot just wanted to focus on Lestat's past, and then rushes the actual Queen of the Damned story at the end and just like pushes it in, shoves it in. You know what I mean? It's not even it's not even comparable to the first vampire film. It lacks good acting, it lacks gore, it lacks horror. It has a new metal soundtrack and John Davis on the project. It really just doesn't scream out new metal or even like alternative in any way. Basic 2000s slop. 3 out of 10 I've given it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you could have possibly done something in terms of making this. You could have gone down like the comedy route. I think you could have gone down like the dark comedy sort of angle if you were making this film. You could have made it quite cheesy on purpose, quite funny, light-hearted. But it sounds like it was trying to take itself really seriously.
Oh yeah, it throughout the whole, it's all taken 100% seriously, and it just makes it like unintentionally so funny that like they're trying to make out that this is like in universe, this music is like just turn the world on its head. And it's new metal. It's basically like Diet Korn music, really.
2002, so it was past the peak of new metal as well.
It was when new metal was like in its like kind of
life support stage.
I'd say it's sellout. It's sellout stage, where like it was really getting propped up by like MTV, and it was like really becoming like commercialized, which basically was kind of like the death stage of it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like you were saying before, like why couldn't someone else jumped on this project? I think that if this, obviously, I said before, like they have to start work on this film, otherwise they're going to lose the rights. But I think because 6 years after this. What hit the world by storm after this?
What, 6 years after this?
6 years after this film came out. What just absolutely took over everything?
In 2008?
Yeah. A certain film franchise.
Oh, Batman.
No.
The
Twilight.
Yeah, of course.
Twilight just completely exploded. And they're bad films, aren't they? But I think Twilight was the right place, the right aesthetic at the right time. And I think this film was just too early and it missed that chance.
Yeah.
I think if this film started production about 2005, I don't think Jonathon Davis would have been on the project at all.
No, he wouldn't.
But I think someone who would have really done this film really good and would have just absolutely dived into the project and really could have done something great with this because it's their wheelhouse. Gerard Way, My Chemical Romance, emo explosion around this time. Vampires, they're moody, they're like melancholic, they're like a bit whingy, bit privileged as well.
Yeah.
The emo craze would have this could have just slotted in so well. New metal and supernatural for me just doesn't.
No,
it doesn't tie in, does it? No. It doesn't match hand in hand.
And a lot of the songs on this album, on this soundtrack as well, they're from bands that you associate with being these like sort of macho type bands. You know what I mean? The likes of like who's on here? Godhead, Papa Roach is another one. And even like Disturbed to an extent. Like they're quite a sort of like a jock band.
Yeah. In just a couple of years ahead of this, you would have had Evanescence.
Yeah.
You would have had, Marilyn Manson was really like in his prime around that time.
Yeah, Paramore were in the
Paramore.
They were in the Twilight soundtrack.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there was bands that could have definitely slotted into this perfectly. And people would have craved on. I mean, this soundtrack's very popular. People still to this day bring this soundtrack up. So just before we get into the soundtrack, we're almost there into the music bit now. But I just want to give a very quick background on the film, the soundtrack, and me. So this is late 2000s, deep in the Korn obsession, and this is around the time that I've got the Korn albums now. I've completed the discography. but I'm like a vampire. Like the thirst for blood never ends. I'm wanting more. I need more. I need more. So I'm diving deep into the deep realms of Korn space, the Korn
Mm.
fan site that I'm sure you remember quite well.
Yes, I
And
remember you loving it.
I start hearing about the film, like kind of like side projects, solo projects and stuff. I'm
Mm.
like, oh my god, like Jonathon Davis was in a film.
Hmm.
Oh my god! And then I'm looking into it. I'm like, what? They made a sequel to like one of my favorite films. I never even fucking heard of this. So part of me was like super excited, like, oh my god, this sounds like amazing. I can't believe this. And part of me was a bit apprehensive, going like, hang on.
Yeah,
If this was something, then I would have heard about it.
yeah.
There's no way this would have like slipped under my radar. So I was very like, I got the soundtrack first, and I remember seeing it as like a holy grail in like the Korn collection. I was like, oh, I've got some real rare Korn stuff here. I pretty much went, this is basically like a Korn thing, even though
Mm.
it's not really, is it?
No.
But in my eyes, I was like, this fits in well my Korn collection. This is a rare piece of
Mm.
of the Korn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, let's just before we get into it, before this episode, had you heard any of the original soundtrack songs off this?
I had, yes. In fact, I had heard most of these because I remember checking this soundtrack out as well when I was around about 2007, when I was deep into my Korn fandom. And obviously, I saw that Disturbed were on here, I saw that Deftones were on here, I saw that Static X were on here, and I was into Static X. I dug them quite a bit. I did listen to, I recognised maybe 7 of the songs on this soundtrack before I'd listened to it. There was a few on here that I either didn't listen to at the time or I just couldn't remember because they were so bland.
Yeah,
But yeah, most of them were songs I had heard and I just had to be reminded of. So I mean, there's a clear separation in this playlist. I can split this playlist into 2 different camps. There's the original songs by the bands.
yeah, which I think yeah. Sorry, yeah, we'll cover the film songs first, and then and
Yeah,
then the original bands
and
second. Yeah,
and you can basically pinpoint which of these songs were written by John Davis and which of them were original songs by the bands because they are listed as, for example, Change in the House of Flies is listed as Change in the House of Flies, Deftones, whereas Not Meant for Me is listed as Not Meant for Me, Wayne Static, not Static X, Wayne Static. So that says to me that this song was written by Jonathon Davis and Wayne Static simply just performs on it.
yeah.
So, and you can hear that when you listen to these songs. Some of these songs just sound like Korn songs with a featured vocalist.
Yeah. So what happened there was obviously John Davis was on board for this project. He did the music, he did the songs for the film. However, because of record label issues and commitments, I think he was with Sony at the time, and this is Warner
Mm,
Brothers. So because of that, they wouldn't let him be on the soundtrack CD,
right.
which is just another bizarre thing about such a mid
Yeah.
nothing film. Is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they really went above and beyond, and like I've got to say, regardless of what we think of the music,
Mm.
they went above and beyond to get people in on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really didn't have to or need to. Like, it
Mm.
really wouldn't have been the end of the world if this soundtrack was never released
No, it wouldn't. No.
commercially out on CD. I don't think people would have really been screaming for these songs. So
No.
it really did show like a lot of goodwill and a lot of good faith. To, like, they really like Chester Bennington, the
Yeah. Yeah.
David Janian for Disturbed, Marlon Manson,
Yeah. Big names.
even though he's not on the soundtrack on the Spotify version for some
Yeah.
reason. Well, I think we all know, but it's still a bit odd, isn't it?
Yeah. 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 No,
So
it is. Yeah.
because of them commitments, he brought in these people to kind of basically do over the vocals, and let's get right into them. So we've
Yeah.
got not meant for me by Wayne X from Static X.
Yeah.
Pretty dark, atmospheric, accessible new metal track.
Mm.
It's got the jury is waiting. Catchy little chorus that I'm trapped in this world,
Yeah.
lonely and waiting. It like really basic melody. It's very accessible new metal music, isn't it?
It's very, very untouchables is what it is.
Yeah,
And the first 3 songs on this track list are basically just mushed together for me. They sound exactly the same. Not Meant for Me, Forsaken, and System. They all feature different vocalists, but my God, I was listening to this and I was just thinking, this just is putting me back in that place where I'm listening through to Untouchables. And just the amount of filler on that album, the amount of just nothing songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like they did remind me of that album so
Fancy
much.
production over
Yeah,
quality
no, like
songwriting.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically like just no hooks or anything, just like but nothing outrageously bad that you remember it because it's so bad. It was just so these first three songs on the track list
Yeah.
they really were mediocre.
One thing I've got to ask you, because I was never a Static X fan,
Yeah,
and one thing that's very weird about these songs is it's basically these artists just basically had to trace over Jonathon Davis's vocal takes, didn't
yeah,
they? And because of that, some of them sound quite all right. Some of them
mm,
sound quite weird because it
yeah,
sounds like that artist doing a John Davis impression.
yeah.
Is this song? Could this song fit in with a Static X song, or is this Wayne X doing a John Davis impression? Because I have to say, I think he does a really good John Davis impression. There's parts of this where I thought, wait, is John Davis still actually left on this track? But the harder I listen in, I'm like, no, that's not him. That definitely
Yeah.
is Wayne
When
X.
Static, yeah.
Yeah,
This could not fit on a Static X album at all. Like, the Static X don't sound anything like this.
right. So
There
he's
is,
basically doing a trace.
yeah, he is, yeah. So that's what I mean when I say that. I listen to this and I just feel like I'm listening to one of the ballads off Untouchables. When Static comes on and he does a good job of, like you said, mimicking John Davis. He just sounds like John Davis, doesn't he?
Mm.
Whereas if you listen to Static X, particularly the first couple of albums, I think they've not aged badly.
He died, didn't he?
Wayne Static
Yeah,
died,
he had the mad hair, didn't he?
yeah. So I like I think that I recently listened to the first Static X album just out of curiosity. I think it was this playlist that made me re-listen to it. It's not bad at all as far as new metal goes. It's aged really well, but it sounds nothing like this. It's more industrial metal than new metal.
Yeah.
It's definitely new metal. They definitely got more new metal as they went on in the later albums, which were not great. But like I said, this period was they just released their second album, Machine, which you listen to that album, you listen to this, not meant for me. It is like it's two different bands completely.
Yeah.
One of them's a Korn song being covered by Wayne Static,
Hmm.
and the other's his own band and stuff. So yeah, for me, no, it's you can tell that John Davis is the brains behind it.
How many vampire bats out of 5 would you give this song?
Straight down the middle, 2.5.
Two and a
I
half.
just,
So Ozzy Osbourne's bit the head off one of them.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty just okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'd
I'm,
say.
I'm, I'm impressed we didn't get a single garlic through all of that. I
I
think
know.
I was worried. I was like, oh god, I'm going on too much. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'd probably give it 3 vampire bats. I'm a bit softer on it myself.
yeah.
I don't mind it. It's pretty accessible. It's whatever. I'd try and put these songs onto people who like I thought, oh god, if I put something off Issues on,
Mm,
they'll run a mile. But this is, as you say, I feel like it's accessible enough to be
yeah,
like listenable by untouched ears.
yeah,
Should we get into Forsaken from David Drainian from Disturbed? I think this song perfectly fits into the Disturbed catalogue, unlike what you said about the previous song. It does just sound like a Disturbed song to me, like one of their more kind of
mm,
softer ballady ones.
yeah,
To the point, I'm pretty sure I do actually think people think this track is just a Disturbed track. I've seen it be shared
yeah.
around, you know what I mean? I think David was a good match for the vocal style, and it's one of the only ones that doesn't come across as he's doing a John Davis impression. It
Mm,
sounds more of his own kind of style.
yeah,
This song was always used in my videos when something dark and evil was happening in the plot.
yeah.
You know that.
I'm over it.
I'm over it. You see, I cannot beat her.
Yeah. He's
Waiting.
he's such a drama queen, isn't he? When he's doing his vocals, he
Yeah,
really hams it up.
he really. You know what? Like I kind of. I keep knocking this down in my head, but the more we get on, the more I think to myself, we need to just do a Disturbed episode.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot to go out there, isn't there?
We'll lock that in. That's got to happen. Right, so we get into System by Chester Bennington
Hmm,
of Linkin Park fame.
yeah.
I do quite like. Sorry, the Vampire Bats out of 5 for
Yeah,
Forsaken.
I'm just gonna get this out of the way nice and early. All three of these first three songs, they all get a 2.5 out of 5 for
2.5.
me because
Right.
they are all so bland and forgettable. I think,
Uh,
and the vocal performance variations are the only thing that makes me be able to separate them.
yeah, I'll give Forsaken a 3.5. I'm a lot softer on this stuff
Yeah.
than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, System by Chester Bennington. I like the slow build and kind of like the haunting intro, but this is I feel like this is Chester Bennington being so held back and not to his style. It does have like classic Linkin Park vibes, but always comes across a bit comical
Yeah.
to be put in the vampire epic. That's something else where it's like this is meant to be the supernatural vampires and stuff like that, and it's got lyrics like, "Why is everything so fucking hard for me?"
Yeah.
It's teen angst, angry in the bedroom vibes in it, and it's like it just doesn't match the.
Doesn't know.
That's what I mean. Like a few years later, you could have brought My Chemical Romance and Evanescence in.
Yeah.
You could have brought bands that really like to kind of explore these kind of areas, and it's
Yeah.
just like the typical Linkin Park of like I really like Linkin Park, but like for a long time that they were memed as
Yeah.
this very I'm an edgy teen,
Yeah.
fuck you, mom, fuck you, dad, kind of music in it,
I mean, that was sort of that's how they broke through, isn't it?
It was, yeah.
That was their initial fan base,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
they evolved greatly, but well, around this time it's just so funny that it's like this big vampire thing, and it's like, why is everything so fucking hard for me?
Well, I actually think that there's songs later in the playlist that are even more random, and we'll get to the Papa Roach one in a bit, and I was just like, why did you think that was a song? Why did you think that was a song suitable for a vampire film soundtrack?
Yeah,
But anyway,
yeah.
I think we'll move on, shall we?
Free bat for System. Then we get
Yeah.
Slept So Long with Jay Slater from Tenerife.
Oh, I've got my. This is in a completely different order here on the
Yeah, I've put all
soundtrack.
the original songs on first.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Oh wait, did I say Jay Slater from Tenerife? I mean Jay Gordon from Orgy. Sorry.
Brilliant.
This was always my favourite song out of these.
Oh,
I think Jay is the closest out of the singers in similarities to Davis. So it basically sounds like a Korn song through and through. Again, I really liked this song as a kid. I
yeah.
really liked it. I'm guessing you didn't.
I didn't hate it as much as some of the other songs on here. I feel like a bit of a cop out again, but I'd probably just say this is middle of the road again. Again, it's an original song written by Jonathon Davis, and a big problem I had with Untouchables, which I keep going back to, is that it just sounded so phoned in and so like lifeless and so sort of uninspired.
Well,
And I
there's
think
Vampire, isn't it?
yeah, I think that's the problem with all of these songs that are written by John Davis for the purpose of this film. I think they all just sound like Untouchables afterthoughts, Untouchables B-sides. Yeah, it's trying to do the dark, creepy atmosphere again, isn't it? And it's just sort of like, yeah,
It was,
you're sort of going half in. You're only putting the tip in with the creepiness.
yeah,
And an example of a song that gets the creepiness absolutely spot on, which we'll get to later, is Deftones' song "Change" in the House of Flies.
yeah,
You know, this songs like this, I just feel like they're a little bit like phoned in. They're a little bit like halfway house. Like he's trying to keep them mainstream so that they can appeal to anyone, but they've also got to fit into this vampire film. They've also got to be creepy and sinister, and I don't think it works. I really
no.
don't think it works at all.
I think it was the same issues like Untouchables as a whole, and God, people really disagreed with our Untouchable takes, and then we're just
Yeah.
doubling, dribbling down here. But I think by the Untouchables time, this was kind of when John Davis ran out of life experience
Mm.
material in his music. He'd
Yeah.
kind of tackled a lot of the topics that he wanted to
Mm.
tackle and were, bubbling up inside him. And it just goes to the subject matter, and it's just kind of like, I just don't think nu metal and supernatural vampire, melancholic kind of erotic novels go
No.
hand in hand at all. Again, I think this would have been a much better job for various other artists that you could have picked out, and
Mm.
like you said, with Change, which we'll get to soon, creepy and atmospheric. That's Deftones' bread and butter.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas,
Yeah.
like with Korn, it was like they were trying to
Mm.
lean in that direction, and they kind of done it. They played it off fairly well in Issues, I'd
Yeah, yeah.
say, but
Parts, yeah.
yeah, it's just it is it's a bit clumsy, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what I mean?
Clumsy's a good word. Yeah.
And then the last one out of the originals, which won't be on your list, is Redeemer by Marilyn Manson.
Mm.
This appears to be scrubbed off the soundtrack on streaming, which is odd considering Manson's material, which was Warner Brothers label anyway,
Mm.
remains. But then, because this only got added very recently onto Spotify. I remember looking for this not too long ago and it wasn't there.
Right.
So this has only really been added back in. So yeah, it's a bit odd. It's a shame, really, not getting into the Manson stuff. But I think this song's pretty good, and I think his performance is pretty good on it too.
It's probably the best of the originals, I would say, definitely. I think Marilyn Manson does a very good job of elevating the track.
Yeah.
His screams are sort of like the sort of chilling, aren't they?
Mm,
And like you said, he should have been more prominently involved in a film like this because he's got that weirdness about him,
yeah. Yeah.
that natural oddity, that natural sort of like otherworldliness about him, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I think he would have done a much better job as the chief sort of songwriter or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I thought I'd give this song a 3 vampire bats out of 5.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the best out of all of
I
the
might push it
originals.
to a 4. I might push it to a 4
Yeah,
and be very generous. To sum up them songs anyway, I think David and Manson did the best performances on the original songs.
yeah,
They may be basic, a bit bland, a bit generic teen angst new metal, but I think there's a charm to them, and I think there's clearly well, from what we've kind of said, this kind of sounds a bit counter, a bit hypocritical. But I think there was a lot of effort, and there was a lot of effort really for
yeah.
considering none of these songs really get put in the film for any more than like 30 seconds.
Mm,
They really went all out to like create pretty much almost like half an album's worth of
yeah.
material just for this kind of soundtrack for the CD.
Mm,
It is kind of like amazing, really, because I couldn't really ever see it happening for anything else or anything that's really come since. It's just kind of a shame that this whole thing was kind of like wasted on a film that barely featured the songs, with only one
yeah,
song getting a full start play to finish. It
yeah,
just seems like they just didn't know what they probably reached out to Davis, get us some songs. Maybe they weren't fully happy with the songs. Maybe that's why they're barely in it. Maybe they
yeah.
wanted to just focus more on the the lore of the vampires and all shit like
Mm,
that. So they're the original songs. So we get into the original songs that were
yeah.
not made for this soundtrack, and we have Change in
Hmm.
House of Flies by Deftones. I know this is the most well known, but this is truly the best Deftones song they've ever done. I think it's so dark and moody and creepy, kind of like the imagery and the lyrics capture "Pull Your Wings" and "I Laugh."
Mm,
The key change on the last two choruses give me goosebumps, like they're really
yeah,
ah, ah, like an amazing performance. The drums at the end just
yeah,
fucking going mental. Like just really builds and builds and builds this like amazing like crescendo of like you just feel it in your heart.
yeah,
Don't you? Like fucking hell, this is a gut punch.
yeah.
This is probably the best one off the soundtrack in it, and
It's hands down the
mm,
best song on
one of the
this
songs that
soundtrack.
actually gets a decent bit of airtime in the film
Yeah,
as well. One funny thing about this song, though, the first exposure I ever had to this song, going back to that worst songs thing where you went on about like E-Bombs World and that,
yeah.
there was a flash animation to this song
All right.
of this dad. Like who beating the really crude bad animation, and he was basically like beating up his wife and his son, and
Wow.
this I know it was so dark and weird. Like you go on from watching badger mushroom to this, and I
Oh,
remember watching it, being like, "What the fuck is this?" But I was like, "This song slaps a bit, though,
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
it? Weird, bizarre, goes back to Down with the Sickness vibes, doesn't it?" But
yeah.
anyway, what do you think of Change in the House of the cute, lovely little buzzy bees?
Oh, I've been waiting for the opportunity to talk about Deftones on this podcast. I love this song. I love Deftones. I loved them as a kid, and I think they've aged even better. I think I enjoy them even more now, especially the later albums. White Pony, which is the album that this song is originally from, is an absolute classic of alt metal, new metal. It sounds amazing even to this day. Doesn't sound dated one bit.
No.
This song, man, is just so like the creepy little it's like a creepy door opening, isn't it? Like on its hinges,
Yeah, yeah.
sort of like sort of the creaking sound of a door opening when it just leads into the chorus and then it goes boom da 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 da. I watched you change. Fucking amazing song. Like still gives me the chills
Yeah.
every time I listen.
Like you never
Yeah, she,
had wings.
yeah, it is chills all over. Chino's a great vocalist. Fits this band perfectly. Love it. Absolutely love it. I don't know what more I can say about this song.
Yeah, the only Deftones album I have on vinyl is Around the Fair. and I think
Oh yeah.
that's okay.
Around the Fur is a very good new metal
Yeah,
album, but it is very much a new metal album. They evolved past that
I'm
sound on White Pony.
I'm eyeing up White Pony. It's on the Amazon wish list.
Yeah.
As soon as it's decent price, I can get
Oh,
it.
definitely.
We move on now.
Should we both agree that changing the House of Flies is 5?
Oh yeah, five
Yeah.
vampire bats out
Yeah.
of five. Yeah, the levels of quality. We're getting into roller coaster territory now.
Very much so.
So now we're getting to Dead Cells. Cells in CELLS by Papa Roach. What do you think about Papa Roach? Papa Roach for me is a band that's always existed,
Yeah,
but it's always been like
never liked them. Never ever liked them.
never ever liked them. You were never even
No,
a little bit of a
not even a little bit. No,
what? Oh, fuck it! I
no.
don't even know how that fucking song goes now.
Oh,
Suffocation,
cut
no
my
breathing.
life into
That's it. The
pieces.
meme. It's a meme, isn't it? Yeah. And then they've got that one that I always thought like it ripped off the Prowler riff from Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
It's like, all
yeah.
my money,
It's Prowler
all
riff.
my down.
Oh my god, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I always thought when I was a kid, I saw it on the Kerrang and I got so angry, going,
yeah.
"They're robbing Iron Maiden."
Yeah. Good. Can't believe I never even noticed that. But yeah, I know exactly which song you mean.
Anyway, the song itself, I really don't know how to feel about this band. Something about them has always screamed industry plant to me.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I don't mind a few of their tracks. This wasn't the worst song in the world, to be honest. It was nothing special, but you know, I had my headphones on. I could nod my head like Dead Cells, dun 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 dun. Dun. I nod my head a little bit. It wasn't it wasn't making me angry. It didn't offend me.
it made me angry because it came directly after Change,
Yeah.
the playlist, and I was like, yeah, this is quite the drop in quality. And speaking of songs that do not fit with the style of the film and what the style was going for, like that creepy atmospheric sort of, you've got like this rap metal thing coming in,
Yeah, yeah.
and it just sounds like Do you remember POD? Did you ever listen to the band POD?
I am aware of POD.
I
Are they
listened
the Christian ones?
Yeah, the Christian,
Yeah.
yeah. But I was listening to this, and I didn't. I just had it on in me earphones as I was walking round, and I didn't check who it was. I was thinking POD on this playlist. I didn't think POD, but I looked. Oh, it's Papa Roach. Papa Roach. It's basically we've got POD at home.
Yeah.
POD for the masses. I wasn't a fan of this song. I thought the chorus was really, really. It's not a chorus. It's just dead cell.
Two vampire bats.
I'd be very kind and give it 2 vampire
Yeah.
bats. Yeah, it wasn't for me.
Okay, we're getting to Penetrate by Godhead. I hated it. Annoyed the hell out of me. It just felt like an off-brand Nine Inch Nails. Nothing more to say about it.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, wasn't it? What made me laugh about this though is not this song as much. Like,
Yeah, you dug a little deeper, didn't you? You
I
dug a little deeper.
dug a little deeper into this band, and I went to this album actually, and I was like, right, okay, what else is on? Do I know any other songs by this band? Because I recognised the name, and I was like, I'm sure I've heard another song by this band before. There's a cover on this album of Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. Soon as I saw that, I went, I have to listen to that. I have to listen to that because there's no way in a
Yeah,
million
what on
years.
earth?
There's no way in a million years that can be good. And I listened to it, and it's one of the worst covers I've ever heard in my life. You cannot make Eleanor Rigby a new metal song. Who thought that was a good idea? It's just like the little happy little cheerful melody. Eleanor Rigby. You're trying to make that this like
With the strings and
yeah.
all that.
You're trying to make it this moody little fucking industrial like Eleanor Rigby, like with hushed vocals and all that. I found it hilarious. I really just laughed out loud.
There was something in the water around this time, on that, and we spoke about this last time we convened, didn't we?
Yeah.
That like what was with it with new metal and like covering
I
like
don't know. But I mean the new wave thing
there
is
was a
one
lot of
thing.
new wave, but then they went a bit deeper back, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like obviously into stuff like this. What was with it with them just covering, making really like weird covers?
If you're going to cover a Beatles song, cover like Helter Skelter or something like that. Something that's naturally got the heaviness behind it. Like
Yeah.
Eleanor
You could do
Rigby's
like a moody version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps
yeah,
or something, couldn't you? Know?
like Sergeant Pepper, Lonely Hearts Club Band song or something like that. But this like Eleanor Rigby's just such like a joyful little summery song. It's like, what are you doing? I don't know. It didn't. But anyway, that's not on this playlist. Penetrates on this
One
playlist.
vampire bat shite.
Yeah, at best one. Yeah.
super quickly brush over this one because we have done it to death now. Down with the Sickness by Disturbed. All I can say is Domestic Breakdown is intact on the soundtrack.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh god.
So imagine getting this CD and you've just been to see the film. Well, it's 2002. You've just walked out the cinema going, that's fucking great, that bloody hell. Like,
Is it not in
and
the film, that bit? No. Is it cut out the film, or is it in the film?
it's in the no, it's at the gig, isn't it?
But
Oh god, no,
the
that's
domestic
not
break,
in it.
right? Yeah.
If that was in it, this film would be a masterpiece.
Oh yeah.
Imagine walking out the cinema. It's 2002. The life's great again.
Do you know what would have been great? Do you know what would have been great if that bit was in the film and that was when all the vampires come in to try and kill him? Don't do it again. I'll be a good boy.
Yeah, and you're like, oh god, bloody hell, that was. I really loved the music on that, and you pop into HMV and you see the soundtrack, you pick it up, you go home, you're like, oh, I remember this one. This played at the gig, yeah. And then you hear that, and you're like, what? 5 vampire bats out of 5. Love it to death.
Unrateable.
So then we get into Cold by Static X. Fine.
Yeah.
Again, always felt a little like just a little whatever playing. This band just felt like one of the many others that hung onto the Korn's apron strings and then vanished into the ether forever for me. I remember you trying to get me into this band. I remember you like recommending this as a band to listen to, and like I remember like raising my eyebrow, going, you think I'm going to listen to that shit?
Do you know what?
I'll just go back and listen to Korn. Thank you very much.
Do you know what? This song was off the second album, Machine, and I never thought this was one of the better songs on the album. I always skipped this song, I must admit. I much preferred like Black and White or the title track or whatever. This song was always one that I would skip.
Yeah.
So I was surprised to see that they picked this song to be on this film. But then again, it does sound the most like it fits. Out of all the Static X songs I can think of on them first 2 albums, if I had to pick one to fit into this film to be sort of like a sort of creepy little sort of slow moving,
It does work a bit better, doesn't it? Yeah.
It works a bit better than something like a Black and White or Otzig Electric or something like that. So it's not a terrible song, but it was never, even back in the day when I used to love this album, it was never one that I'd go to. This song, 2.5 stars for me. It's an average song.
Yeah. It's 2.5 vampire bats again for me. And then we get into Body Crumbles by Dry Cell, not to be confused with Soft Cell. The one thing I do have to say is that bass, so cute, so lovely. Before this soundtrack came on Spotify, this song wasn't on there either. In fact, none of their music besides this is on Spotify. This band is like a crazy drop in the earth, like they vanished off the face of the earth.
I can't even remember this song.
No, this is what I mean. It was one album, it was done, and they vanished off the face of the earth. Crazy, but anyway, what a complete Linkin Park rip-off. To me, it feels like it feels like looking back, there was only really 5 styles of new metal music, and everyone was just copying either one, and it was either Korn, Linkin Park, Deftones, Limp Bizkit, or Nine Inch Nails. Well, actually, I'd say Rage over Limp Bizkit, but. Rage Against the Machine. But it seemed like there was 5 core bands, and everyone else would just kind of like pick and mix. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take a bit of Korn, I'll take a bit of Rage Against the Machine, and this will be my band, and I'll be called Static X. And you know what I mean?
I think they
just
started
an example. Just an example.
I think they had their own sound when they started off, but this is a completely unoriginal drab. Like the singer is so Chester coded, isn't he?
He's so Chester coded, but then in the verses he's doing like a bit of a I don't know, like almost like a bit of a Pearl Jammy kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it reminded me of some of them god awful post grunge bands.
And then he goes into Chester and he was like, "Inside my body crumbles."
I think I mentioned to you, didn't I, that this reminded me of bands like Seether and Stained and just that crap, that post grunge rubbish from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And with a Chester Bennington impressionist over the top of it, it was bad. This song was really poo. It was.
Yeah. Again, it's just so many bits in it where it's just like, oh, this just feels like such a page out someone else's book where it's like, I don't know if I'll be right. It's harder to be yourself.
So corny, and it's so fucking like so butt rock. 1 star.
Yeah. What? One and a half vampire bats for me.
Yeah.
Then we get to Excess by Trippy, probably the most different sounding track on the soundtrack.
Tricky.
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 Did I call him Trippy? Did I?
Yeah.
It's interesting and kind of cool, but that's about it. I like the cute little piano, the little keys, ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, 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 and the little woman like, I believe in people trying, I believe in people crying.
So it
It
was.
does actually fit the mood a bit more,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah.
So it was quite odd that Tricky is featured on there because like I was aware of Tricky from
I'm not, all completely unaware of them.
Trip Hop. He's basically one from the Bristol trip hop scene, same as like a Massive Attack, bands like Massive Attack and stuff like that.
No, nice.
So
Okay.
so it's completely removed from like the new metal thing that this soundtrack was going for. This is the only artist on this playlist that has no connection to new metal whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really random. And I thought this was one of the better tracks on here. Like I said, it's got the sort of creepy moodiness that you want for a soundtrack like this. Tricky's guest features are always really good vocalists. I don't know who it is that's featured on this song, but like you said, she does a good job. Didn't mind it. I didn't mind it. It wasn't one of Tricky's better songs. I prefer
Oh,
his.
you've been listening to The Night by Disturbed?
Oh yeah, that made me. It made me go and watch.
Oh, is that like when you finish the
Yeah,
soundtrack and
because
it goes on to other music? Yeah.
because I'm an Apple Music head, I tend to save my Apple Music from being corrupted at the end of the year with rubbish for this that we're listening to for this podcast.
Oh God, my
Any
Spotify warp
yeah,
this year is going to be fucking mad.
any rubbish that I want to listen to, I listen to it through Spotify.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, let me look back and listen to that.
We should do an episode at the end of the year reviewing our Spotify wraps
Oh
because
yeah,
they're going to be interested after starting
yeah,
this podcast.
yeah. Well, like I said, my Apple Music will be completely different to my
Yeah.
Spotify. But
What's your rate? What's your rate? Excess by Tricky.
I'd go 3.5
Yeah, no,
stars.
I go the same.
Yeah,
It's a bit eerie. It's a bit creepy. It's one of the songs that fits it better than I
yeah,
can't even remember when this is in the fucking film. But
yeah.
so last song, unless I think I'm missing
I
one.
think you've missed Headstrong by
Oh
Lizzy.
yeah, well I think that just says everything about it, doesn't it? Really,
Yeah.
because I can't even fucking remember it. Wait, how does that one go?
It's like really badly produced. It's like
I can't even remember
I
it.
can't even do an impression of the chorus because it's just so like it's
Oh yeah, I remember it now.
and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's like one of them songs that you would think that John Davis has wrote this song and
yeah.
it's got a featured vocalist on it, but it's a band that were just a Korn rip-off band, and again they never did anything apart from this song. They never did anything noteworthy. It had terrible production on it. This song, like when the chorus kicked in, it's supposed to be like loud, and you know, like when the chorus and change kicks in, and you hear the dynamic shift go from quiet to
Yeah, and that's what I
boom,
mean.
like
It
that,
makes you stand up
and it's
and
panoramic. It sort of fills the room. Well, this tries to do that, and it just goes off so flat and so sort of like what's the word I'm looking for? Compressed, like
yeah.
so overly compressed, and it's like it's an ear saw.
Yeah.
Ironically, not a good song. 1 star for me. I thought I would never couldn't listen to it because the production was so bad.
Yeah, one for me as well because I didn't even put it in my notes.
Yeah,
I must have just completely forgot it. Last song, Before I'm Dead by the Kidney Thieves. Never heard this band in my life.
same.
Again, the female vocals help separate this from a very familiar sounding soundtrack.
Yeah,
I do quite like it, to be fair. This is the closing song off the film, and we're like as they're walking down over the bridge with Big Ben in the background, and it all gets blurry, and the lovely, nice vampires going to suck each other off. This is like playing in the background,
yeah,
so like it does stick with you a bit more in your memory, and
yeah.
I don't think it's bad. It's an okay song.
Yeah. Again, I'd go 2.5 star maybe.
Yeah. I'll give it three vampire bats.
It was listenable. It produced
Yeah.
okay. The vocalist did a decent job. It was okay.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if I've got to give credit to anything for the Queen of the Damned, it's kind of the effort they did put into the soundtrack. The songs are, part of interesting as a part of Korn lore, and definitely worth checking out for Korn fans who've covered the base level of the band and want to start digging a bit deeper. People who were kind of like in my position many years back. But really, it's just an alright collection of accessible new metal that just feeds you the plot points from the perspective of the vampire from the film. Clearly, Davis has a lot of pride for them since they've been performed live in his solo projects since about 2007, and even a few times in Korn sets themselves over the years in and out. From pretty solid picks like Change and and that to cheap throwouts, but nothing in particularly bad on the soundtrack. I've rated it. I've rated it 6 out of 10, which I think may be generous, but
I think that's very generous myself.
yeah,
I think there's some songs on here that there's a handful of songs, maybe three that I could pick out that I would say they're decent songs. They're pretty good songs. None of them are the originals that were written for the film. They're all songs that came off, existing albums already. So I've got to give this soundtrack a 4 out of 10. I think Change does it a massive. I think Change drags it up a lot. The Tricky song's pretty good as well. All in all, there's not, apart from those songs, there's nothing that I would go out of my way to revisit on this soundtrack. It's not aged very well for me. A lot of the styles that they're toying with now, like you said, they feel archaic. They
yeah.
feel old. They feel like no one's really doing this sort of style anymore.
If you could really quickly off the top of your head put bands into this soundtrack that you think would have worked better,
Yeah.
could you just give us a few, for example?
Does it have to be from this time period as well?
If you can, but really, like I've said, I think this film they should have started work on this film a few
Yeah.
years later. Obviously, it's hindsight. How were
Yeah.
they meant to know that all this great music? Well, great in certain perspectives. All this music was about to explode, and again, they wouldn't have known. But I do think that if they held off on this, they probably could have had something a lot stronger than what exists.
The first one that jumped out to me was Nine Inch Nails and Trent Reznor. I think that he should have been more involved in this songwriting process to this soundtrack because I feel like it's sort of right up his street what they were trying to go for. And I always think John Davis tried to borrow from Korn's middle albums. I thought he was trying to borrow from Nine Inch Nails anyway a lot, wasn't he?
Because Trent can really capture emotion, can't he? He can really capture anger. He can really capture, sadness.
Definitely.
He would have really done well, but I think he would have been very I think they just wanted someone to make the music, where someone like Trent Reznor would have probably wanted some creative output on the film. And fucking God, I wish he did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He could have had something a lot different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nine Inch Nails, solid pick. I say from the time period, anyone else apart from Trent Reznor, I am struggling a bit. I think Manson probably would have done a good job, but considering everything now in the modern day, it just would have made this film even more messier than it already is. You know what I mean? You don't want someone who's getting into legacy status, but you want someone who's making waves in the music scene. Again, I think a couple of years in the future, if they started work on this, if they got My Chemical Romance involved on this project, I think they really would have had. I think it would have been Twilight before Twilight. I think it would have swept the rug under Twilight's feet.
Potentially,
yeah. But that was it. A mediocre film and a mediocre soundtrack. What a great
what a combination.
What a great subject for an episode. But it's always something that's always it's always existed in my life, from, as I say, finding it as this rare relic in the Korn discography, and the history around it and stuff like that. And a lot of people love this soundtrack. No one really. I've never heard anyone praise this film, but people really love this soundtrack. I did put stuff on Reddit. I don't think we've got time to read out the feedbacks, but people were like, "Great soundtrack, absolutely loved it. Great songs and stuff like that."
It'll be the Korn fans, won't it? It'll be the Korn space heads, the sort of
Yeah, I feel a bit bad that I've become this jaded kind of grown out of them. Part of me does wish, that blissful ignorance, and I could still take from Korn what I did back in the day, but I just can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So a little teaser for next time. Next episode's going to be an album recommendation episode. So I thought we'll give away what we're doing now. Yeah. So anyone wants to listen to these albums and come on board with knowledge of them.
Yeah.
So my pick is going to be Churches, 2021's their fourth album, Screen Violence.
Yeah.
I won't give away my thoughts on that album as of yet.
Yeah.
And your pick is?
My album is going to be Visions of Bodies Being Burned by Clipping. So lovely and happy and cheerful vibes all over that one.
What was the year of that?
2020.
Okay, so two very modern albums,
yeah.
Very very recent albums. Okay, well that'll do it. If please check out the film Queen of the Damned.
Check it out if you dare.
If you dare, yeah. Watch out for the John Davis cameo. It's very It's very something. And yeah, that'll do us. That will do us. We will see you next time.
We will. Goodbye.
I want to suck your tits.
Au revoir.